when we're talking about this topic, we might touch or mention or discuss topics which might not be, let's say, to preference of the political and military leadership in Kiev, perhaps even military secrets and so on and so on. So if I address anything of that kind, please stop me, okay, or tell me so. It is not a problem. Don't worry, okay. I don't want to I know I get to hear lots of things from very different directions, and I don't know what is officially considered secret or touchy or problematic or whatever. If I mention any kind of names, I try to avoid mentioning names. But if I mention any kind of names, I shouldn't. Stop me, okay? It's absolutely no
Yes,
problem, please.
yes, of course. Yeah, I understand.
The point is, I don't want to cause you or anybody else any kind of troubles. That is the principal issue.
Yes,
Okay.
I totally agree that we've got to be careful. But actually, there's a lot of leeway within which we can frame our discussion. So
yeah, of course.
basically,
I just want to make sure, before I start asking things which might be unpleasant or not opportune to discuss in, so to say, whether in public or in private, actually. Again, I don't want to cause any kind of troubles, and I don't know, because I'm not in Ukraine. I'm not an Ukrainian. I'm not subjected to the local regulations and rules in this regard. So I don't even know what are these regulations.
I'd like to also say that I'm a Canadian by passport, and I'm also not in Ukraine right now, and that's why I can speak freely. And I've never been a member officially of the Ukrainian army, though I've been working with them and flying the drone on the front lines for a couple of years. But I've never had any formal contract signed.
Okay.
This is they offered me multiple times, but I never agreed to that for my own reason, like a 3-year-old contract. And so I don't have any formal affiliation with the Ukrainian army or the Ukrainian government.
Very good.
And so I don't have.
Yeah, just wanted no, the question is, for example, to start with, we have to start with the way I think. We have to start at the top and discuss, down to the bottom, from strategic level down to the tactical level, so to say. And for example, one of the things that is unclear to me, in your book, for example, you are mentioning, okay, back while Zaluzhny was still, General Zaluzhny was still in command or chief, commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces. This is the, so to say, the top of the armed forces. Then there was the commander of the ground forces, which was Syrskyi. And then you mention also contacting or being in touch regularly with Deputy Minister of Defense. Is that correct? Do I understand this correct?
No. It's Deputy Prime Minister.
Deputy Prime Minister. Okay, excuse me, I mismemorized this. What I don't understand precisely enough, or where I do not see through, so to say, in this entire system, is when you, for example, when you discuss things with Deputy Prime Minister, whom is he contacting? Is he contacting the Minister of Defense or somebody, was Syrskyi in person or Zaluzhny in person? How is that working here?
I think that they have like a common decision making there. So he probably contacts other senior members of the Ukrainian government, and they have a discussion. Well, the exact form of this discussion I'm not aware of. And for example, when I shared one of my memos with Fedorov, he said like everybody is aware of them. And I said, did you tell Zaluzhny and Zelensky? And he said, everybody. So basically, this is, I don't know how it got there through Yermak. Probably through Yermak. I think that's or through Arhamia or some other person. Yes. I do not know the intrinsic how they communicate with each other. So I had several members of the Stavka, namely Deputy Prime Minister Fedorov and Brigadier General Commander of the National Guard Kudnenko. They were
that is another point. So you've mentioned Stavka. So could you explain a little bit about Stavka, basics about Stavka? Who are the members? How often are they meeting? What are they discussing?
Yeah. So they are meeting about once per week, and they are discussing basically operational, strategic, and sometimes technical issues relating to the warfighting efforts, and not just that. So they're like can discuss electricity problems or logistics or anything that they want to discuss. But of course, my understanding is that's more of a formal meeting, and so the real power, the main decisions are happening behind closed doors. This is my understanding. Is that it's just they listen to the generals, they listen to ministers, set their agenda, and sometimes Zelensky said, "Okay, I talked to such and such generals during the Stavka in his evening addresses to the nation." But I think the main decision making, of course, happens in Ukraine behind closed doors, and I'm not a member of those discussions. So I had my influence only through Fedorov and Pivnenko. And they didn't provide me reports.
That's clear. That is clear. That is clear.
How the exact decision making is taking place. And Syrsky, of course, he's in charge of the armed forces, and but all the major decisions involve the president and what we call it, military political leadership.
Is anybody else but Syrsky from the military? Is anybody else present or involved in the Stavka meetings or in this kind of closed doors, behind the scene meetings?
Well, from my understanding is that the main decisions were taken by Yermak, Zelensky, and Syrsky, and in that order. And now Yermak is gone. So, yeah, of course, Zelensky is in charge, but he's not very detail-oriented person, and prefers to focus on foreign affairs and addresses to the nation, like more on PR things, you can say, for his own benefit and the benefit of Ukraine in general. And he outsourced most of the military decisions to Syrsky. Like the way he prefers to do things is that, for example, if you are responsible for the electrical, for Ministry, I don't know, of Infrastructure or Ministry of Electricity or whatever they call it. So this person is responsible. So Zelensky doesn't want to get too much involved in it. So he likes to outsource. For example, and unfortunately, because in the constitution it says that Zelensky is the supreme commander-in-chief, and immediately below him is the commander-in-chief. And it's kind of, the Russians have the same setup. Like Putin is the supreme commander-in-chief, and I think Gerasimov the
chief of staff,
head of the general staff.
No, I'm asking this primarily because of the following. One of the things I'm not getting while reading your manuscript, I couldn't understand properly who is making decisions, for example, in regards of developing the UAV system or introducing the UAVs to the service. Who has the final say? Is it Syrsky or is it Zelensky or is it somebody else below Syrsky?
I think this is a collective decision making. So officially, of course, there's when when I persuaded the government, and of course they had their own basically sources of information, but I was one of them. Okay, this is be correct. So I was one of the persons who persuaded Fedorov to create Unmanned Systems Forces, and I provided a detailed memo of the reasons why it should be done. And then Fedorov went to Zelensky. I don't know whether through Yermak but my understanding is that he did not get Syrsky involved too much, because my understanding is that Fedorov and Syrsky are not on very good terms. Like they can be okay, but they're not best friends. And so he went directly to Zelensky and said, we need to create these Unmanned Systems Forces. And I understand that he recommended Sukharevsky, the first commander, to Zelensky. I was not involved in that. So it was his decision to appoint Sukharevsky. I think maybe he knew him before. What was his rationale? But the problem is that Sukharevsky was a brigade commander and not a drone commander. And that was the problem. And when Zelensky interviewed Sukharevsky, they did not have a clear vision of how are they going to develop these forces. So despite in my memo, I more or less in detail described the structure that I propose to make and the functions of them, like both for the defense and offense. But unfortunately, Skharevsky did not share this vision and did not have his own vision. So essentially, Zelensky said, "I want something that will fly and will throw bombs at the Russians, and I want big explosions." I think it was like that, and I want to show them on TV, and say, "Oh, nice! It's really good for PR. Like creating unmanned systems is good for PR." And I think that there's also Umerov involved in this. So initially, Arahamian sent my memo to head of GUR, to Umerov, and to Fedorov. He recommended me to Fedorov, and then Fedorov said, "Okay, let's meet," and it got from there. And
excuse me, just a short interruption. Yeah. Was your memorandum in Ukrainian or in English?
All my writing and my communication with the Ukrainians was in Ukrainian, as I know both Russian and Ukrainian. And I also worked for a brief period as a translator for like a freelance translator without official contracts.
You mentioned that, yes.
For the Ukrainian General Staff, Colonel Bogdan Sinik, I think his name was. And I also used that as a conduit to pass my memos because the assistant of the colonel knew the assistant of the head of the general staff during the revolution. It was I may have forgotten the name. I think
no problem. It's in the manuscript. Okay.
Yeah, and Shaptala, I think Shaptala in general. And he said that he will send to him a plan for the 2024 because there was a big discussion in the media. Let's create a plan for the it was one of the reasons why Zelensky fired Zelensky. Not the real reason, but the reason that they gave to the media, because he didn't have a plan what to do next. And while they were discussing it, I decided to submit my own plan. Okay, guys. And I sent it by Fedorov and and then directly to the general staff by assistance to the head of the general staff. And if you want to, we can talk about. I can say a few words about the plan, or if you prefer, we can talk more about the decision-making process.
We are going to get back to that. The point why I'm asking this is from talking with so many other Ukrainians, from being contacted by people who tell me this or that. My impression, generally, is, or actually, your book, what you are writing in your book, is absolutely confirming plenty of things I've got to hear, which is Zelensky is just about PR. And my impression is that he's often ignoring, actually preferring not to hear, not to listen to any kind of bad news. So all he's interested into is something that is going to be good for PR. Do you share this impression?
Yes. I think this is actually a model of many foreign leaders. Like if you look at Trump, he is also mostly PR-oriented person. So he looks. His main concern is that he looks good on television and that it has a good bearing on his political rating. And so I think Zelensky is also of this mold. So he's most a PR-oriented person, and maybe that's how he won the elections. He was very good with PR. But of course, theoretically, in a democratic government, for a democratic government to work properly, the leader should also lead and should lead the nation, not just in PR, but also in war, if there is war. And so I also think that Zelensky, he knows that it's good to appear. He wants to appear to be a war leader, but I don't think he completely lives up to the standard. In terms of that, he's mostly interested in PR. For example, he takes part in decision-making, in major decision-making, but his first concern is that it looks good on camera. So if, for example, if Unmanned Systems Forces look good on camera, okay, let's do it. But without understanding that I wanted to create them like a continuous kill zone, so that there will be no gaps in the defense of the drone kill zone, which the Russians can then exploit. And also to ensure that EW works well with the drones on the front lines. This was the idea to centralize the fragmented capabilities, and not just, of course, at the tactical level at the front line, which of course was the main priority, but also deeper. Like, for example, if you do strategic long-range drone strikes, including naval vessel strikes, it has to follow with the logic and the so-called plan or the overall strategic and operational end that we want to achieve. And unfortunately, I think it could be interesting for you to know, and for the listeners.
Just go on.
Is that I think Umerov somehow got a feeling that Fedorov also wanted to replace him with his own kind of protege for the ministry, and then Fedorov will exert a lot of influence. So he will have like the ministry, he will be in charge of the drone program. He will have his own Ministry of Defense and Unmanned Systems Forces, and Syrsky was really worried that he'll be the next to go, and so I think that Syrsky and Umerov kind of made a coalition against Fedorov, and Yermak kind of supported them, and Fedorov and Arachamia were kind of another faction within the servants of the People Party. This is my understanding.
I can only confirm this is the. No, but I'm receiving the same information. Essentially, you're confirming what I get to hear from 4 or 5 different other contacts in Kiev, or people who are in touch with contacts in Kiev. So I can only say yes. This is, I'm getting to hear this for 2 years at least. So you are essentially confirming this. Let me just close this part, so to say, of our chat with the following question. You've mentioned we are talking about Yermak time and again. Okay, now he is not around anymore. But what is your impression about the influence of Yermak upon Zelensky? He's some kind of a shadowy figure, even if well known in the public. But I'm explaining this also for the information of future viewers of this interview. Yermak is, for example, to me, he was explained as somebody who is so influential, who is so strong and so powerful politically, that de facto Zelensky can't tie his shoelaces without Yermak's permission. I mean, I've heard some more drastic expressions in this regards, but let's use this one. So what is your impression in this regards? Just briefly, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, of course, especially during the later years, he's accumulated more and more power and influence because he was primarily the conduit between Zelensky and the outside world, and he was also responsible for appointing his people everywhere. And so the more people he appointed, the greater his influence became. And then he became so powerful that it started to basically to other people within the servants of the People Party became really worried that he's got too much power. And I think that caused his downfall, that he thought that he became somehow invincible. And of course, the corruption scandal coincided with their decision that something's got to be done about it. And I think that actually, if you look at Yermak's power, it really, there's no power, there's no this, it's not even in the Ukrainian constitution that the head of the presidential office. And from how I view it is that if you look at the Soviet governments, how it started, they wanted to make collective decisions at first, and the general secretary of the Communist Party was basically a nominal figure. He was not supposed to be the supreme leader, and so Stalin kind of reserved the power through appointments of his own nominees because he was general secretary. And then in the communist system, the general secretary became the main person, basically, the dictator. And I think here it's kind of a diluted version of this. So a person who has no constitutional power has this kind of real power of being able to appoint the appointees
and dismiss and so on.
And this means and especially if the president is not very much involved, like Kuchma was in running the country, or even Poroshenko, he was very much involved and everything. And Zelensky likes to outsource things. And that's why he outsourced basically the running of the country to Yermak, especially during the later years. And also, I think there's this producer dash movie star or comedian model. So as a professional, he always outsourced the financial, administrative functions to his producer.
Yes.
And actually, yes, and so he outsourced the producer of Zelensky's presidentship is Yermak. But now that the producer is gone, I don't know who's going to be the next one, because I don't think that Zelensky wants to be involved in all these matters, trivial matters in front of the country.
It's okay, Illya. I think you've heard enough. Thank you very much for.
I think they will ban me from visiting Ukraine
for a lifetime, probably. Let's just
move
over.
Let's
just move over to the next point. Another thing I don't understand in regards of Ukrainian development and deployment of UAVs is the decision-making process in regards of long-range attack UAVs. This is what how I designate UAVs which can fly, 300, 400, 500,000 kilometers away, strike deep into Russia. So obviously, from the way you have described it and from the way I have heard it from other contacts is. Yeah, certainly at some point in time, Zelensky had to say yes, and he probably did it because it is flashy and it's going to look good, fire and smoke on the TV. But how is this? How did this process develop? And who is in charge over there? Or who is making decisions? Who is taking decisions about what kind of targets are going to be hit in Russia? Is there some kind of a body in this regards or whatever?
Okay, so early in the war, as the war started, the Ukrainians had a very limited drone program. So there were some enthusiasts who were calling for the government to develop, to procure and to produce more drones. And unfortunately, the government only focused on Bayraktar. I don't know whether they got a kickback from it or not. What was their rationale? But they bought these Bayraktars, and I think that was it. So they had some Leica 100s. But the contract was very small, and so and then because the Ministry of Defense was not interested in drones, fortunately, that Fedorov is a very competent, by the way, leader, and I didn't hear any stories about him being involved in corruption. At least, I think, I don't know. I'm not his man, his person. I'm just saying. The impression that I get from my contacts and from working with him, that he volunteered to do what the Ministry of Defense had to do, that is the drones. And so he was running the Ukrainian drone program for a couple of years until I think last year when Yermak decided to take it away from him so he can get some kickbacks from Mindich and others. And so it was developed within the Army of Drone Programs, and then Brave One and others. But I think the main leader of this was Fedorov. But of course, others, because the Ukrainian military system is very fragmented, and there are these silos. For example, like GUR, or there's SBU, there's General Staff, and they don't like each other. So they don't kind of compete with each other. And so, of course, this creates duplication of effort. And there are no synergies. And the current Ukrainian long-range drone program is run by SBU, GUR, and the General Staff. They have a special detachment for, so at least 3 agencies are responsible.
So basically, correspondingly, every of these 3 agencies is running its own projects, and each has its own favorites, right?
Yes, and they don't like each other.
Okay, good. And how do they select targets? Because you know what is striking? Last year we have seen long-range UAV attacks on oil refineries, and it started well. And one refinery, another refinery, or POL, oil lubricants storage depot was hit. Okay, starts great, and then week later suddenly they are striking factories, or electronic factories, or explosive factories, or whatever else. Then they're starting to target military headquarters. then every week it's something else. So there is no synergy. Obviously, nobody there is in charge, and there is no strategy how to disable the Russian industry or economy. So that is my question: who is deciding about striking what kind of targets? Is it also per agency in question, or is there somebody who has the final say in this regard? So what is going on?
I think it can be described in one word, which I'm sure you know. Ukrainian word is called bardak.
Yeah, bardak. Okay. Yeah.
And it's
I'm frequently
the main
using
theme
it
of the Ukrainian army. Yeah, and so actually, I think there's no. How can there be a unified strategy if there are three competing agencies carrying out these strikes? Of course, I think like Zelensky wakes up and says, "Okay, I had a dream last night that we are. It would look on television if we, I don't know, bomb the Kremlin or if we start attacking the tankers or I think it's done like that." Of course, it would be better, and of course, I and maybe even others recommended focusing on one key bottleneck of the Russians. Like if you do the oil refineries, you need to do all the refineries and nothing else. If you start to change your focus, then it will have zero effect because you cannot destroy all of Russian reserve base. You can only hit them at one bottleneck, and you got to strangle them with this effort. If it was up to me, I would just do one thing and ignore the rest. Just maybe send one drone just to keep them busy and to basically to distract them from defending their refineries. But
I mean, the point is this.
Of course, it's a mistake. Yeah.
I mean, the point is this. The way I understand it from studying other wars is that anything is better if you do it, if you're focused on doing one thing, than if you're trying 15 different things at the same time, and most of this for PR purposes. Because fire and smoke is sexy, it's certainly nice to show on the TV, but the question is how much effect it has. And my impression in regards of this targeting of Russian refineries is that there is nobody involved in this process of targeting process who even has a knowledge about what to target on a specific in a specific refinery, because refinery is okay for lays for people who do not have technical knowledge to understand them. Refineries are lots of pipes and lots of fuel tanks. But there are specific points at the refineries which, if you hit, you knock out this refinery not for 2 weeks or for two months, but for half a year. And every time somebody strikes or Ukrainians strike Russian refineries, it seems that it is randomly targeted anywhere. So apparently there are people who are running these attacks. They didn't even ask own experts for technical expertise.
Here, I would disagree with you. There's a team that works, and they target primarily. I forgot how there's a technical name. I'm not an engineer. There's some concentrate producing something. They target a specific capability of the refineries. Of course, they do not do it randomly. Yeah, and they have a team who. But the decision to switch from targeted refineries to targeting like arms factories or whatever. I don't know why they changed it. Maybe because the head of GUR or like Budanov gets tired of hitting refineries, or I'm just giving an example.
Okay.
Just the head of general staff says, okay, let's do something else. Like I get tired of this. But I don't think there's a clear strategical plan, or they don't adhere to this plan. Like let's focus on one capability and like a bottleneck. And the Russians, they are also not stupid. They analyzed their bottlenecks. They wrote a report, from what I understand, of the analysis of their bottlenecks, and they tried to basically make them wider. So they invested in, for example, they had a shortage of one capability, and they invested in to make it to be less dependent on Ukrainians if Ukrainians found it out and started targeting. And actually, on the strategic level, I highly recommended the government to focus more on the front line and on the Russian troops fighting within Ukraine than on strategic capabilities. I said that you better spend this $1 billion on FPVs that work, or on EW, or in buying Mavics. for some reason, I understand why, because the DJI is a Chinese brand, and they don't like buying Chinese stuff. But actually, what I proposed to them and what I propose to the British now is that you need to give money directly to NGOs, for example, like Poverty Живым, or I don't know, some other funds, because the Ministry of Defense is so corrupt and incompetent that it cannot do anything. So there are two options: either appoint the people who run the NGOs as the Minister of Defense and give them the ability to change all heads of departments there, so they reform it, which is the better option, or as a preliminary or transitory option, just to give the funds directly. I think the budget of Poverty Живым is about $500 million, and it's been much more effective than the Ministry of Defense, which produced mortar shells that don't explode, stuff like that.
I've seen all of this. I mean, I've been in touch with arms dealers abroad, for example, in the Middle East or in Latin America. People who are trying to sell stuff to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense and who have given up trying to do that after 3 or 4 attempts because it's not working, and everybody is just asking for cut. I've been in touch with people who are running NGOs and I've been in touch with troops who have received these mortar shells that do not explode, or if they explode, then they're exploding while the troops are loading them into mortars. I've seen all of this, and I've heard. I mean, it is so that nobody who has to work with Ministry of Defense is working with Ministry of Defense. People are avoiding this. If they anyhow can, they rather pay somebody or bribe somebody in order to avoid the Ministry of Defense. This is how it works meanwhile in Ukraine. So this is plain clear. Right? This is why reading your book was really, oh gosh, he's really confirming everything I've heard over the years, and it's even worse in some cases. Seriously. Okay, now let's move further. We have talked about strategic. So there is obviously no system. There's no single body running this strategic campaign against Russia. And your opinion is it would be better to use all of this technology and high explosives, of which there is also a shortage meanwhile, not only in Ukraine, but in the West as well, to target the Russian troops on the front line. This is something I'm missing.
Or in Ukraine in general, but not too far away. Yeah.
This is something I'm also missing. In particular, there was lots of talk about Iran exporting Fajr rockets or tactical ballistic missiles to Russia. And there was, everybody in Ukraine was talking about this for months. Of course, none have turned up, not a single one as far as I know. But that is one of the things I'm missing. Why is Ukraine not working on some sort of a replacement for HIMARS and for Krim and whatever tactical ballistic missiles, of which there are too few, which are very highly effective when they hit? But why is Ukraine not working on some sort of replacement in this regards that would be based on UAVs, for example? Are there no such ideas in this regards? A UAV that could fly, let's say, 80 to 150, 200 kilometers behind the front line, penetrate Russian air defenses, and smash into headquarters, smash into depot, smash into troop concentration, something of that kind.
Well, the Ukrainian has a number of long-range and mid-range drones, but if you're talking specifically about a ballistic missile, there, of course, I think I don't have the details about this program, so you're asking the wrong person. To give you a short answer, but in terms, some of these basically what the military need is that you just need this capability, and you don't really care whether it's cruise missile, ballistic missile, drone, or whatever. But of course, the missile has a much larger warhead, so it can have more penetrating and explosive power. But in most cases, it can be replaced by drones, and it's been replaced. But in terms, of course, there's a ballistic missile program, which is classified and which I have no.
No. I'm not even trying to go into that direction. My question is this: why is there no concentrated effort to replace too expensive, too complex, obviously not coming forward ballistic missile project with UAVs that have similar capacity? They must not fly Mach 4 They can fly 50 kilometers per hour, but important is that they can reach the target. For example, assembly points of Russian troops which are starting their assaults. Everybody knows there are assembly points and concentration points behind the front line. Of course, it's hard to find them, but obviously Ukraine is not working enough, or at least it appears to me, not working hard enough on obtaining this reconnaissance strike capability to find the concentration of Russian troops in real time behind the front line and strike them before they can start infiltrating the front line, for example. In similar fashion, there's next to no targeting of Russian units operating long-range UAVs. They are targeted very rarely, and if then probably by accident. Similar, I can go on with such examples. Is anything undertaken on this, so to say, operational level? I'm not talking about strategic range, but operational, this is 150, 200 kilometers behind the front line.
Yeah, previously to this year, there was the drone program was more focused on the tactical and long range. So there was this gap in the mid-range and the mid-strike capability. But this year there were a number of projects and a number of drones, including in the Brave One program, that actually addressed that issue. And I don't know how much information is available in the public domain, so
you are going to go into details.
Yeah, I don't want to go. And also, okay.
No, it's okay, Ilya. Absolutely, I said. I don't want to trouble anyone.
This year there was improvement in mid-strike, so this is
okay. I mean, I just happen to see very little of this. I rarely hear, especially since Ukraine has run out of stocks of HIMARS and out of stocks of ATACMS and similar means. And lately, okay, we hear some here and there about Neptune strikes and so. But in terms of striking really Russian assembly points behind the front line, Russian depots more than 80 kilometers behind the front line, Russian command posts or forward field command posts and such things. Number of reports in this regard has decreased significantly over the last year.
Yeah, and another problem is that the Russians are also adopting, so they are dispersing and concealing a lot of their warfighting capabilities.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy to target as it used to be. And I think this could also be a problem if there would be a confrontation between NATO countries and Russia, is that due to this battlefield transparency, which goes beyond the battlefield, it goes all the way into Russia through the satellite and other sensors. And it has learned how to disperse and to conceal its capabilities. And to an extent, of course, not absolutely, but to an extent. And so the NATO countries might find it more difficult than they would have before the war to focus their air power on the key facilities.
No,
but of course, more can be done. More can be done, as there's always more can be done. But the Russians are also after the HIMARS strikes, they moved their depots further away and started to disperse them.
Yeah.
So
they have moved them foremost outside of the range. They have started using cable communications to conceal themselves better and so on. And I understand the trouble of alone finding such positions, not to talk about targeting them. But still, I'm wondering why is there why was there or at least not until relatively recently, concentrated effort in Ukraine to develop the capability to find and strike such targets. That's the point. Anyway, okay, that is at the operational level. Now, the next point I would talk about would be tactical level, so to say. Why? Because we have this situation where lots of Ukrainian units are operating their own UAV, whether it's company or even a battalion or something like battalion, or at least there are lots of battalions who have their own UAV companies, as far as I understand it. This is the part, meanwhile, in many brigades, a part of this fire support element in every battalion. So I'm trying to figure out, is there a centralized point? Is the general staff doing its job and trying to apply the same structure and the same level of equipment to all units, or is that this more individual, depending on brigade to brigade, or how do you see this?
Yeah, if we said that the Ministry of Defense is corrupt and ineffective and the Bardak rules there, the same can be applied to the general staff. So the problem is, yeah, so essentially, of course, I've always advocated for a centralized, for the centralized unmanned systems forces to take charge not only of large drone formations, but also of the whole dronification and robotization of all forces. So all Ukrainian army, all land forces would receive the same training, have the same protocols. So my idea was to send unmanned system forces representatives to the brigades and on the temporary or permanent assignment, and to ensure that this whole drone kill zone works well. And now there's a little problem here because they didn't implement it correctly, and so due to inter-service rivalry, and so many drone operators now prefer to work for large formations, which were a part of the Line of Drone project, and the brigades have difficulty with finding and recruiting and training their own drone personnel, because the best and the brightest go to unmanned systems, and unmanned systems for some reason doesn't give back. I mean, like, it doesn't take charge of the drone units that operate outside its formal command structure. So my idea was it should have been some sort of a matrix where unmanned system forces would be in charge of large drone formations, as well as support all the rest, because it has the expertise and the technical and tactical knowledge how to do
it. And just for comparison, the Russians have introduced a centralized approach to this issue. Yes, and they have nowadays. They have, of course, they also have a few better or elite, if you like, if you want to call them that way, drone units. But generally, they have applied the same approach, same protocols, same system to all of their formations, and it's working, and it's resulting in them having a massively bigger production of UAVs than Ukraine has. Just for comparison, this is what I'm also missing: this centralized approach in Ukraine. I understand that there are lots of private initiatives, and there's nothing wrong with this. It is just that I'm missing one point of contact in Ukraine that would say, okay, you have this, you have this, you have that. We are going to check all the three systems. Whatever turns out is better or more promising, we are going to pick this system, select this system, and rush it into mass production. Nothing is happening in this regards. And this is not to talk about the lack of manufacturing force, meanwhile, in some cases. You know, people who are assembling drones or making small parts or whatever, you need to do for this. So this is why I'm asking this question. There is apparently, you have mentioned reasons. Ministry of Defense is incompetent and corrupt. General staff, what are they doing? I don't know, but they're not doing their job, which would be to collect the way I understand it, collect the first-hand experiences from the front line, put this in form of studies resulting with recommendations what to do in the future, and corresponding with the development of specific procedures. Is that the way you see it as well?
Yeah, my idea was that the centralization of the drone forces and the getting them under one roof, and to make sure that there are common protocols, procedures, that it should be the responsibility of unmanned systems forces, and they should be given, they should be responsible for it. But for that, of course, they need to have the resources, and they need to have the ability to implement their recommendations. And so everybody knows the general staff would not do that because they have problems with analyzing data and especially data that they don't understand. For example, like the drone war, they don't understand it. But actually, first, I just want to give you an example, so we don't talk
just
about.
Go on. Yeah, no problem.
Something in abstract. Early in 2024, I recommended to Kivnenko, the head of and to Fedorov, to create brigade-level unmanned systems formation. So then I said, you will have a first mover advantage because the Russians are going to do that. they will eventually get there in 1 or 2 I said 6 to 9 months. They will create their own formations, and if you do it now, you'll be able to create large drone concentrations, or and break through the front line, and then introduce drone-centered maneuver units to hit the Russian drone kill zone from the rear and to envelop large enemy groupings. But the problem was that they didn't say, okay, let's do battalions. So they were doing half measures, and then only in 1 year. 1 year has passed since the first large formation of brigade size was created. So they kind of accepted the direction of the form, but they didn't go far enough. And because of these incremental changes, it was not possible to hit the Russians with a surprise attack of a large formation, which they would not be able to resist. And now it's like taking antibiotics and then stopping, and the germs can then learn how to adapt, you know? So if you give the antibiotics, you need to give them in a surprise. You need to give them in the whole course. And so you need to create these large formations, hide the creation of these formations from the Russians, concentrate these formations on a narrow sector, break through, and achieve operational freedom of maneuver.
Almost you are achieving a surprise moment. You're having a moment of surprise on your side in this fashion. Instead, what is constantly happening in Ukraine is that you are drip feeding specific innovations to the front line.
Yeah.
And then what happens to this? The Russians are given enough time to adapt, to adjust their own tactics, to develop countermeasures and strike back and defend themselves from new technology and new innovations. And that is a major problem. But let's come back to this brigade level unmanned unit. This is a concept I like a lot because it makes sense to me, simply because, well, the situation on the front line is the way it is. So you need something of that kind. You were proposing this, or this you have developed this idea already. When was that exactly? Last year?
No, it was more than 2 years ago. So it was late 2023. Yeah, late 2023. There was a short memo to Zaluzhny, and in early, I don't know if you read it or not. I sent it through the general staff, and the more detailed memo that got me in touch with Fedorov, Pavlenko, and others, Arahamia, is that it was in early, I think it was 3rd of January 2024. So it was 2 years ago. And if the Ukrainians had created those large formations then, and ideally hit it from the right, I said that the first formation could be ready in 2 months if you do the right thing. So the idea was to take seeds from the best brigades and to let those seeds train the necessary forces.
And the usual process, so to say, yes?
Yeah. So not created from scratch, of course. And the idea was how to create the correct command and control of large units so you can concentrate drone power, and to make sure that the radio frequencies are used, like you saturate the radio spectrum, and at the same time you don't jam your own drones. And and the whole idea of my coming back to the 2024 strategy that I recommended the government to adopt at the beginning of the war was to focus, like you cannot create concentrations of armor, artillery, infantry because of the transparent battlefield. But what you can do is that you can concentrate unmanned systems because they are much smaller and mobile. And this is the only concentration they can break through the enemy drone kill zone and gain UAS superiority over the battlefield, because if you have like 1,000 drones and the enemy has 10 drone operators there, it will be easier for you to find those 10 operators.
Of course.
And then after they are, either you destroy them or they exhaust their FPV loitering munitions, so they are low in stockpiles, and then you can introduce regular maneuver forces because there are no drone operators to resist you. And of course, there should be based on surprise, mass concentration.
But this is the point. You're combining the moment of surprise with the mass, with the volume of attack, so to say, severity of the blow you are delivering. Ilya, please don't get me wrong. Before they cut us off and stop our chat, let me ask you something a little bit more about this concept. Brigade level UAS unit. Was it in your opinion already 2 years ago? Have you had an idea to add ground moving unmanned system to such a unit?
At that time, it's like we're talking about late 2023.
Okay.
Such systems were not really developed, technically. Okay. So this year, we can say that this is the year of the UGV, because there has been a boom in the Ukrainian UGV. There were new models introduced, and the production facilities have also increased. And so what Syrskyi decided to do, which was in spring, I think, is that they decided to create companies like before with the drone program. They created specialized drone companies in each frontline brigade, like about 100 brigades. And now they decided to do the same with the land robots. And I said, this is a mistake. You've got to concentrate the land robots because I need them for my breakthrough.
Yeah.
Well, not mine, but Syrskyi. Let's say Syrskyi gonna do it. Okay, Syrskyi's breakthrough because they like to take my ideas as their own. Okay, so you need to concentrate the drones, and the first wave used as a bait. So you uncover the enemy hidden and dispersed enemy positions, and more importantly, you find the FPV drone operators who will have to reveal themselves.
Yep.
And so then you hit them.
Yes.
Yeah, when you see the drone coming up, you see the launch site, and then hopefully you can find the drone control centers or antennas. And so the first wave of attack of the UGVs would be used as a bait to uncover the enemy forces. And our concentrated drone force will be the main destructive power of destroying the enemy positions and enemy drone operators. So, and only then, once you unmask them, you destroy them from the air, and then you use them to secure key terrain features and take them under fire control with remote land robots. And only then can you move up small mechanized units. We're talking about, for example, let's say 2 our infantry fighting vehicles with mounted infantry to clear the foxholes or bunkers, and then bring up your own drone operators so they can support the infantry closer with and so this attack would come in leaps, for example, 5 to 10 kilometer leaps, and you would have to break through the enemy drone kill zone during day 1, because otherwise he will respond to your penetration and will bring up additional units. And the area you need to, in early 2024, the enemy kill zone and the situation of drones was such that it was possible to find the gaps where there were less EW and less drones. And these were the gaps that I recommended the Ukrainian government and military leadership to exploit. So you concentrate your large unmanned systems formations on sectors of the front where the Russian unmanned systems have not established themselves due either to local leadership problems or terrain features.
Whatever is the reason, yes.
And also I had a little discussion that there were, Fedorov told me in January 2024 that they are planning a major counteroffensive for that year, which turned out to be Kursk. And they said that they were looking to attack in the south. They're gonna just basically the same thing that they tried in 2020.
Year before, yes, yeah.
But maybe not attack on 3 points, not Bakhmut, Votin, and like not on Mariupol axis, and they had another. Okay, they had three axes of advance in 2023, and now they're gonna do it in one axis, but still in the south. And I said that this is like the most stupid thing you can think of. You need to attack where the enemy least expects you, and said attack in the north. We didn't discuss it further. So any other ideas was, I don't know how they arrived.
It's sensitive, let's say it this way. So it's normal, yeah. But the point is this. The point is this. I mean, at some point in time, one has to introduce major UAS formations for land warfare, which means, let's say, units which are deploying simultaneously a sort of land systems like combat drones on the ground, in combination with flying drones. Do I understand this correctly? This is what you are expecting as well, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. And you have to concentrate them in order to, because the strategy that the Ukrainian government adopted, it was to try to attrit the Russians and to wait for them to collapse themselves, which was never a good idea in the first place against such a huge country backed up by the global South and China. So what I recommended for my 2024 plan is that you had to concentrate your drones against one enemy group. For example, I don't know, Group Center or
Group
Vostok,
Center, yes.
whatever.
For example,
for example, just at that time it was, I think or West Group Zapad.
Whichever you want.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. Just take one enemy grouping and focus all your attention on breaking through its front and enveloping it. Why it matters? Not because you're gonna capture 10 or 20,000 Russians
troops,
or encircle them.
No.
Of course, Russia has the resources to regenerate those forces easily, but the moral, the psychological effect that it will have, like if you capture 5 to 10,000 Russians and they give up and you show it on the TV, which Zelensky would love, would be really good. And then only through this psychological and moral pressure on the Russians, it will pressure their own government to find a compromise peace. But at the same time, you had to defeat the Russians on the battlefield, at least some of their army grouping, and then give them like more or less acceptable peace terms. Of course, you wouldn't say like give up Crimea, give up everything. Maybe let's have a referendum in Crimea, but you leave Donbass,
whatever it is.
Yeah, but give at the same time, like your offensive and your success on the battlefield should be, you need to give some saving face opportunity.
For which one needs a strategy at the top, not just superficial PR. That's the problem. But okay, let me ask you something else. In May this year, there was this short war. Some are even refusing to call it a war between India and Pakistan. And between others, there were reports. I haven't seen evidence for them yet, but there are reports that the Indian army has deployed drone swarms for the first time in combat. Where is this concept? How far is that concept in Ukraine? Deployment of swarms of drones. Has it been deployed in combat? Has not? Where is the problem? If you can talk about this topic.
Yeah, the Ukrainian autonomous systems have already experimented with it, and AI drones have already been been used on the front, including swarms. But the technology, and I think that the main problem is the price. So it is much cheaper to use a regular drone than those driven. I think as the price of the technology comes down, it will be able. The Ukrainians will be able to use them on a more regular basis. But I think that the technology is getting there, and it's getting better and better. But the main thing is that the price. I think this is the main issue: technology and the price of this.
You know,
you have to scale up, and of course, I would not recommend them to use it as an experimental weapon. But of course, make concentration of them, produce them in your reserves,
huge numbers,
and then introduce them in a single breakthrough and exploitation battle. So even if if the price has dropped significantly, there should be accumulation of this. And generally, in order to achieve surprise, of course, you need to hide from the enemy the time and place of the attack, but also it would be great if you use some new weapon, introduce some new weapon. It was much increase your chances of like it can be EW weapon, it can be drone weapon, or you need to use a weapon that is already there, but which you haven't used much. For example, assault drones, drones equipped, land robots equipped with remotely operated machine guns or automated grenade launchers. So you can use this weapon has already been used, but you need to use it in a new tactical way. So in a concentration, and this will magnify the effect of surprise, which we need in order to achieve the breakthrough, because we cannot continue this war with attrition. So you need either to sign the peace deal and a compromise, or you need to seriously change how you approach, because you need to make a breakthrough. Without the breakthrough and envelopment of large enemy formations, you cannot continue this war.
Which is the principal problem that Ukraine has, this huge infantry or army formations of the Russians, which continue, they are continuing to replace losses, send every new assault wave, infiltrate, assault wave, infiltrate, and so on. This is what Ukraine is facing now for 2 years, and has ever bigger problems with facing, actually, with surviving this. It's the primary reason why Ukrainian armed forces are almost permanently on withdrawal, gradual withdrawal, but nevertheless, the way I see it. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But what I'm thinking is that to get back to the drones, is that the only way forward is this mass use of drones on the ground and airborne, in order to change the situation, to effect a fundamental change of the situation on the battlefield. Without this, it's simply not going to work for Ukraine, and it is meanwhile probably the matter of survival. So the question is now, why are the decision makers at the top still so slow to understand the fundamentals, the very fundamentals of modern warfare? Is it their indoctrination, military indoctrination through the training, or is it the lack of understanding for modern technology? Where is the problem, actually? Or is it corruption?
Well, I think it's not the corruption, first of all, because the corruption, it's up, I don't know, 20% of the budget, but you still have 80%. The problem is that they are distracted by corruption, that they focus their mental energy on not how to win the war, but on how to steal the money. But I think the problem, on the surface of it, of course, the problem is Syrsky. That's my personal opinion, and many others. Yes, and previously it was Yermak. So now that his political cover is gone, I think that Syrsky's days as the commander in chief are numbered. But of course, I may be wrong. I don't have any crystal ball, but I think that he doesn't understand drone warfare. I think that if people like me or like Fedorov had more power, I have zero power. That's just like Fedorov, okay? If he was in charge of the drone program, and they're actually the talented drone commanders who would be happy to execute this breakthrough. I think, for example, Colonel, I think it's Colonel now, Veris, Lieutenant Colonel, from the K2 battalion. I think he's a very talented guy. And he's also head of large drone formation. I think he could set it up. And there are many others. So Ukraine already has the commanders of drone forces. But in order
That's what I was about to ask, yes.
I think that the drone revolution that has occurred means that the most powerful weapon on the battlefield is the drone. And you need to put all your planning around this. And of course, the drone forces should be the main primary power and the striking power, and generally the weapon system around which you plan the operation. And for that to occur, ideally, I think kind of a drone commander should be in charge of the overall armed forces of Ukraine. So I think ideally should be replaced with guys like for example, of course, he's not a general. But it could be that some sort of a drone commander should take charge.
Have you experienced while working with general staff, with Sekirin, with Fedorov, have you experienced specific top generals or at least colonels, brigade commanders who are really excelling, except for the colonel in charge of K2 battalion? But have you experienced people high up the hierarchy who have the idea about UAVs, who are sharing your opinion?
I think like if you have to pick a general
Mm-hmm.
to lead the Ukrainian forces, I think that I wouldn't be very original if I say that I would support Drapati. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't know him personally, but from what I understand and from his views that I have received is that he understands both drone warfare and conventional warfare, and I
Mm-hmm.
think, but he would have to, of course, he would have to use a good plan, like because if he decides to disperse everything and to follow the conventional school of military thought, which does not include, it doesn't exist actually, because there, but yeah, because drones, like I've been I currently been visiting British military conference, and
Yeah.
it's still developing. Like how do
Yeah.
you use the drone?
Yeah. Of course, it's
Could you
lots of testing.
concentrate them? Could you disperse them? What
Yeah.
organizational structures or operational art concepts to adopt?
No,
So, yeah.
I find it interesting that you are now the next one, so to say, to mention the party, uh, which means several other people have mentioned him to me as the solution. Also, I think Apostol, for example, General Apostol.
Mm, I would support Japan. I think he has
The
more.
party for the start.
Yeah.
Okay, it's perfectly enough. Okay, thank you very much for this. I don't know if we have still enough time and if you are willing to talk longer. If you
Yeah, we
still
can
have.
we can talk longer. Yeah, there's no commitment right now.
Okay, then there would be a question of how do you see where is this? I mean, okay, obviously we need big units that are operating unmanned systems, and which are probably a combination of ground unmanned system and airborne unmanned systems. And obviously the next step is then the drone swarms, which are operating probably also capable of doing both things, striking the targets on the ground, but also intercepting enemy drones. Do I see this correctly?
Well, the drone interceptors are effective for larger drones. For example, if you use an FPV interceptor against a winged UAS, fixed wing,
Yes.
and it's already being used both against Russian tactical and reconnaissance drones and longer range Shahed type or
Yep.
Garand type drones. And I'm not sure if FPV will strike FPV because they are small targets. And probably the interceptor will be much more expensive than the cheap FPV drone. So
So
the defense against the drone is
yes.
lagging currently technologically. Like the net
Yep.
throwers, the shotguns, they're not very effective in practical terms against large swarms of drones. So the only response right now, and the same goes for laser, like it's experimental technology. And there are own issues with it. The main line of defense against the drone is the disbursement and concealment. So this is
Hmm.
the only thing
So
that you can do.
so currently we can dream about, but do not need to expect, for example, an army of drones and apostrophes which is moving forward in destroying enemy drones as much as enemy troops on the ground, as much as armored vehicles and so on. Simply rolling over all of them. You still need different types of drones for different tasks. Is that correct?
Yes, you need the right combination
Uh-huh.
of drones in order to make the breakthrough, of course. And the best way to gain UAS superiority on the ground is to locate and destroy enemy drone launch sites and control centers. And so
Exactly.
for that,
Okay.
you need to have crushing superiority in the correlation of drone forces on a narrow section of the front. So, for example, if you have, I don't know, 2,000 drone operators on a 30-kilometer front against 100 Russians, just a random example.
Yeah.
So, and element of surprise, mass, good suitable terrain and weather, other factors that you need. And of course, you need to attack the enemy defenses to their full depth, tactical depth. For example,
Yeah.
you attack to 20 kilometers with FPV drones and longer inland with longer range drones like even mid strikes. And you need to isolate the battlefield
Yeah.
and to ensure that there are no that the Russians do not maneuver their forces, especially don't bring up fresh drone units.
This is the isolation, yes.
Yeah. So the stages of the breakthrough would be first achieve local drone superiority, crushing superiority in the correlation of drone forces. Second would be to bring a wave of UGVs to uncover anybody whom you haven't destroyed yet. So, so your UAS armada goes over a narrow section of the front, say 10 kilometers, and longer. Of course, it will be deeper and longer with lesser concentration. And then after you destroy everybody you can see, basically the Russians will get down into their bunkers and into their foxholes. So they will not reveal themselves. In order for them to reveal themselves, you need to hit them with some bait on the ground. So that bait, previously I thought you could use some monster tanks. They don't need to attack anybody, just need to move and to receive the hits from FPV drones, and then you find the Russian drone operators. But now with the rise of the UGV technology, of course you would use the robots with machine guns to attack the Russian positions, and then and then the drone operators will reveal themselves because they will need to be sending new drones to attack those UGVs. And the enemy machine gunners and automatic grenade launchers and mortar crews will also reveal themselves trying to repel this attack. And then another wave of attack will bypass and envelop the enemy positions and get them under direct fire control. But the main destructive power will continue to be administered from the air. So the UGVs are basically just to unmask enemy positions and unmask their drone operators. And once those UGVs are basically have fire control over the tree lines and over enemy positions, like you don't see any enemy no longer. Then you can send like 2 Bradleys to see what's going on there. But of course, those units have to be fast and to make sure, because you cannot guarantee 100% that there will be no enemy drone, like a single enemy FPV operator hiding somewhere. So you have to be and the main and once you bring forward the enemy drone operators, you'll be able to hit. You basically, the maneuver force needs to have organic drone capabilities, and the main. So once they break through, they, for example, move through this gap, and they bring in the drone operators to this gap, and they secure the perimeter of the breakthrough area with the drones. So they will establish a chain of drone control centers, and this will be the breakthrough area, the penetration area. And of course, during this period, as the battle is still raging on, longer range UGVs, either with an internal combustion engine or with a large battery, if they're electrically powered, long range UGVs will go in between enemy positions to strike deeper inland, to capture key terrain like bridges, etc., and to generally cause chaos and panic in enemy rear areas, like as a raiding party. So you send the raiders to further confuse the enemy while the breakthrough battle goes on, and then you continue with the exploitation phase.
Can I ask you something additional in this regards? I mean, it's obvious you have been working with Ukrainian armed forces a lot, or have at least tried, have given them impetus and ideas, and tried to move them in specific directions, and some of this have been realized and some of this not. But this is a country at war, Ukraine. Have you meanwhile been able to talk to perhaps even work with NATO members, with armed forces of NATO members? Have you witnessed or seen, or how do you see them developing in this regards?
Last year I published a series of articles in the British Army Review. The published by Chaser, which is the official think tank of the British Army, and I've received positive reception from the British, and I think they're also doing as leading army in NATO outside of America, basically, because we don't know what American participation will be. So I think the British are leading the effort in the defense of the eastern flank. So, and the British have created an 11th brigade, which is a drone brigade, and so this is kind of the large formation that I was talking about, and hopefully it will be responsible for providing anti-drone protection against for conventional forces, but also may serve if it's expanded into and other brigades, similar brigades formed. I think it could be used also for breakthrough and maneuver battle of the future. For example, if the Russians attack the Baltics, it would be a good idea to have a drone wall, of course, which will create the kill zone for the Russians. And actually, I don't think that the Russians are going, if they will attack the Baltics, they will do it in a conventional sense. I think they will try to mask their preparations, because they have already seen that the Americans easily found out about their invasion of Ukraine months before, either through leakage, probably both through the leakage at the high level, but also from their satellites. And so I think the Russians would use, of course, hybrid tactics to start the war. But once the hostilities begin, they will probably do a drone blitz of their own. So they will mass their drone forces like Rubicon and others, and they will bypass and smash through the frontier troops in order to quickly overrun based on their drone forces. So they will base their attack around the drones, around Rubicon and what it can do. And only I think that their plan would probably be, at least it would be the most effective plan. I don't know. How can they can attack NATO?
I think after not only 3.5, but what is it now, almost 12 years of this Russian invasion of Ukraine, one has to start counting from the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah, you have to be prepared. Right. And so what I suggest, and NATO is already creating a kind of drone wall, but it will be probably not just 1,000 kilometers, like in the Russia-Ukraine war, but will be 2,500 kilometers or whatever from the north of Finland to Romania, to Moldova.
So they will resize.
It will be like a huge drone wall. Probably, but why not? Why not? If the Ukrainians can do it, so can
but
NATO.
Except for the British, is anybody else in the NATO doing something under apostrophes in developing serious drone capability, whether ground-based or airborne?
I think that the British are leading here.
Okay.
Unfortunately, for example, like the Germans are spending a lot of money on rebuilding their forces, but they do it without a clear plan of what they're going to achieve. So these are basically piecemeal purchases or contracts. So there's no clear strategy. And I would like to suggest to the Germans too, the Bundeswehr, to have the politicians have recognized the threat from the east and are giving them the funds, and they need to use them wisely. So they should not create legacy forces of the past wars, and instead they should base their warfighting plans and on creating the framework for unmanned systems. So I think that instead of buying tanks and helicopters, they should buy
UAVs or UGVs.
Yeah. Of course, they would say, "Oh, this technology has not matured enough." Like,
well, if you don't invest into it, it's never going to mature. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that you need to create the framework, the professional education and training for personnel, and other things, the infrastructure for the.
If you don't start training people to use and to operate drones, you are never going to create anything at all. It's as simple as that.
And then if a more autonomous or more AI-driven or a better drone appears, you just swap the like with tanks. If a better tank appears, you don't change the tank organizational structure or logistics, etc. You just replace the weapon. And so it goes with the drone. So if you create the framework, the organizational structure, the logistics, the training, the other elements. So I don't really buy this idea that you need to wait out till the end, the technology matures. If you wait out till the end, then you will have Russian tanks on Berlin streets. Yeah, unter den Linden.
Yeah. This is not a particularly nice outlook, but yes. I mean, I'm asking this also because, for example, I've heard not only just one of let's say Central or Western European chiefs of staff explaining things like, "Oh gosh, I can't hear about the word Ukraine anymore, and please don't tell me about drones anymore." I mean, for me, these generals in such positions and making such statements are comparable to the French generals of May 1940, who were still using pigeons to forward messages and so on instead of radio. The problem is how to convince all of them, how to work,
that's actually
how to make the public work, so to say.
What I'm trying to do here with this podcast and with the book that that we've referred to. I think it will be released in January, hopefully. Yep. And I hope to promote the book and to make it popular with the general public at large, and also with the specialized military professionals and the defense community in general. So we need to convince even the generals of the old school that the drones are here to stay. To stay, because of course you should not run away from your other comparative advantages, like the latest generation fighter jets, like F-35, etc. Of course, you need
Nobody's talking about this,
because you cannot hit an F-35 with a drone. So but you should not have a situation where you win the air war. The conventional air war, but they dispersed and concealed the enemy operators, then overrun Estonia. Okay, so and yesterday I had a presentation. One of the slides had like the most likely outcome of the confrontation would be that NATO wins in the war in the air, but Russia wins. The Russian drones win on land. So but I said, but if you create powerful unmanned systems forces of your own, then they will use the synergy with the regular conventional NATO air power, and then you will overwhelm the Russian drones and their conventional forces, and then you will be able to stop this aggression or even deter it, which would be the best outcome, of course.
It would be the best idea, absolutely. I mean, yeah, okay. I've written even more about politics the last few weeks on my blog to extension, so it's very frustrating to watch it. I mean, we are clearly having something of, as you call it, a drone evolution, or fundamental changes in warfare in particular, and plenty of people in charge simply do not understand what's going on and how do they have impact and why, even if de facto directly feeling the impact, because generals at the top of the Ukrainian armed forces must be aware of how much is drone meanwhile having an effect upon their operations, and they seem to still not understand even what can they do, not to talk about what could be possible to do if one applies or deploys sufficient numbers of drones for example, as what you have described. It's sort of a shock force which is getting to the enemy front line, and then securing it, making the way open for classic mechanized formations, probably even in the future for much more, because the way I understand it, for example, one could develop a similar force against enemy air defenses, so to drill, so to say, a gap into the enemy defenses, air defenses, in order to open the way for manned aircraft and other drones, of course. And what is particularly interesting in this regards, I don't know how far you're informed about this, but from what I know about how is Ukraine running these long-range strikes into Russia, is that each such attack is actually opened with a drone attack on Russian air defenses. Can you comment about this a little bit, please?
I was more in charge of kind of the frontline areas and how to win the Russians on the frontline areas, not against deep strikes, and how to break through there. So my expertise more lies with the battlefield and with the breakthrough ideas. And so yeah, I know. Yeah, I confirmed that the Ukrainians use drones to open up to basically open up the create corridors in enemy air defenses through which conventional cruise missiles or long-range drones can go through. Yeah, I confirmed that. But apart from that, I don't have any more details to
you
share
don't
with
have
you.
more insight into this. Pity,
Yeah.
because I think this would be also another important aspect of deployment of drones in warfare, where actually the situation is very similar to what you are doing, which is frontline, just into long range. This is this range of, let's say, beyond 20 kilometers and not more than 80, perhaps 150 kilometers, so to say.
No, but this is actually, yeah, this is like tactical operational range. So this should be achieved. Yeah, of course, I totally agree with you that this bubbled like this area access denial with the conventional. Yeah, so of course, in order to degrade this bubble, drones should be actively employed. This is one of the primary. Like if you're gonna do a breakthrough with the drones, of course, at the same time, there should be this air battle, a conventional air battle to suppress enemy air defenses to break down the enemy forces in this area of the penetration area. Yeah.
Okay. Now permit me to jump a little for the end, so to say, to one aspect of drone warfare which used to be the best known, so to say, of the last 20 years. This is this mail and hail, these big UAVs used for reconnaissance, some of them armed. And now we have seen very little of them in Ukraine. Actually, we have seen Bayraktar being deployed early on in the Russian forepost, which is a license of an Israeli drone in turn. So how are they useful on modern day battlefield at all, or how do you see their future?
Well, the sad story is that they cannot be used on modern battlefields against a pure adversary. So you can still use them if the enemy doesn't have any anti-air defenses, like against tribal areas in Afghanistan. I think they can be used. In some conflicts they can be used, like in some African countries. But if you, I don't see Reapers attacking Russian columns because first of all there will be no such columns, and secondly this Reaper will not survive long. I think you're probably referring to the Reapers.
No, I'm principally
or
asking
similar.
Because, the point is this is the kind of drone, when people are talking about drone warfare, many are still associating drone warfare with Rapier or Global Hawk or Bayraktar or Forepost or similar drones, big, slow drones.
Slow, yeah.
Because we see them most of the time still on the TV. It's only since let's say gradually over the last 2 years that the small, like Mavic and similar drones are taking over in terms of presence in people's minds. So people still think, when you send such a big like Akinichi, the twin engine, the size or even bigger than a fighter jet, and it can carry 3 tons of explosives or weaponry and so on. This is a huge, perfect UAV, and it's stealth and blah 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 blah. It's so fantastic, but my impression is they're unsurvivable on modern battlefields. And I think one of the first lessons that should have been drawn from the war in Ukraine is that even Bayraktar, which was so highly successful in Libya or in Syria, for example, has no place at all in this modern warfare. This kind of warfare.
It can be used in other settings like counterinsurgency, or if you're hunting drug dealers. Like I'm not saying that it's that absolutely, but I don't think that Western militaries should spend money on them, especially because they are expensive. And here,
my impression is similar in this regards. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, and one of the characteristics of drones that I described in my book also is that they should be discardable. So, and they cannot be discardable if they're very expensive. So the price of drones on the battlefield and deeper inside, deeper against the enemy territory should be relatively low. This is the whole point. if they're expensive, like it's prohibitively expensive. So a cost-benefit analysis should always be employed when we are trying to procure any weapon systems in general, not just drones. Yeah. So if we need to approach it. Yeah, I also think that they have no place or a very, very limited place. So.
Okay, Illya, that's basically that. Thank you so much for taking your time and so patiently dealing with all of my answers, all of my questions. Sorry, you have what I like about you is that you are explaining things in very, very logical way and very to the point fashion. Of course, some of the questions are complex and one can never properly describe them, especially not orally. It's better in the books, which is in written format actually, which is why I'm going to recommend your book, Eyes of Machines, strongly around the social media. I hope it's going to have some positive effect. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for joining us. Really much appreciated for everything you have done. I hope your presentations, your conferences on which you are participating are going to have an effect which they need to have. Because the more I think of it, the more I see the situation as urgent, not only for Ukraine, but for others as well, whether it's Western Europe or Taiwan or wherever, and not only them. I hope you can continue pushing and making this clear to the wider public. This is at least...
Thank you very much, Tom, for having me here. And I would also say that I'm a huge fan of yours, and I regularly watch your interviews to Lyudmila and Nemeda. I think it's her name on Ukr Yeah, so I think I also like your sense of humor that you call Syrskyi General of Fantastic News. So, so I hope they will have a more realist successor to Syrskyi now that Yermak's out. But we'll be monitoring the events closely.
Definitely, yes, we are going to continue, and I hope you're going to stay in touch and also, perhaps continue cooperation one way or the other in the future. I mean, if you're in, I'm certainly wholeheartedly for that, and I would love to continue working with you.
Yes, thank you, absolutely. We'll keep in touch.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much.